And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God. And the books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their works, by the things which were written in the books. The sea gave up the dead who were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead who were in them. And they were judged, each one according to his works. Then death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And anyone not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire.
The passage we just read is referred to as the Great White Throne Judgment. This is a point in time when God will judge those who have died in their sins. It's a sobering passage, and it reminds us that a life apart from Christ has dangerous consequences. In today's video, we will dive into one particular subject, the lake of fire. Before we go any further, let's take a look at the word hell. Some people might assume that hell and the lake of fire mean the same thing, but if you examine Scripture a little more closely, you will discover that there is a definite distinction between the two. Now let's take another look at Revelation 20:14. It says, "And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death." If hell and the lake of fire mean the same thing, then how can one be cast into the other? Makes sense, doesn't it? In order for something to be thrown into something else, this would suggest that one thing has to be smaller than the other. In other words, the lake of fire is bigger than hell. The lake of fire has the power to consume hell. Now let's dive a little deeper. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew word for hell is called Sheol. In the Old Testament, this word was translated 31 times as the grave, and 31 times it was translated as hell, and 3 times it was translated as the pit. So what are we saying here? We're saying that the word hell does not refer to everlasting torment. It actually refers to the grave, the final resting place of our loved ones at the cemetery. Now let's check out the New Testament. In the New Testament, the word hell comes from the word Gehenna. It refers to a valley outside of Jerusalem that was used to dispose of trash and dead animals. In those days, they kept that fire burning, and the things that were thrown in it were consumed. Now in 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 4, there's another word in the New Testament that was translated as hell, and it's found only one time. That word is called Tartaru. This is in reference to a place called Tartarus, where the rebellious angels are locked up until their day of judgment. Lastly, in the New Testament, we find another Greek word that was translated as hell, or the grave, around 11 times. That word is called Hades. This word was never used to describe a place of torment. In light of everything we've just examined, let's look at the book of Acts chapter 2 and verse 27. It says, "Because thou wilt not leave my soul in hell, neither wilt thou suffer thine Holy One to see corruption." This passage refers to the finished work of Jesus on the cross. If we understand that the word hell means the grave, then we can understand the significance of Jesus' death. He was buried in a borrowed tomb. He went into the grave. That is, he went into hell for 3 days and 3 nights. And he conquered the grave. In other words, he conquered hell after that length of time. Now, what about the lake of fire? Let's look at a few points. Point number 1. The exact location of the lake of fire is not given in Scripture. Point number 2. Satan, the beast, and the false prophet will be cast into it. Point number 3. Anyone not found written in the book of life will be cast into it. One thing is certain about the lake of fire. It isn't a pleasant place, and there's no coming back from it. Before we close, let's take a look at another point concerning the term hell. According to Old English dialect, there was a popular phrase among farmers. The phrase was known as helling potatoes. When you hear this phrase, what do you suppose they meant? It was just another way of saying, "I'm going to plant my potatoes today." So basically in those days, helling meant planting, as opposed to burning. We hope this video gave you a fresh perspective on the lake of fire and how it differs from hell. I'm sure there might be some disagreements from the viewers, but please leave your comments below and subscribe to this channel for future notifications. Have a blessed day.